Hey everybody, welcome to the Mental Breakdown. This is where I am going to guide us through some big time fights and talk about some of the potential fall offs in their mental game, some examples of how it happened in the fight, maybe some things that can go on to rectify those situations within the fight and in camp and things like that. So let's go ahead and get started. The fight we're going to go over today is the fight that everyone's talking about right now. It is Usman versus Leon Edwards in the kick heard around the world. Like I said, in this podcast, we're going to go a little more between the ears and not so much in the X's and O's, but we are going to show how the mental side and emotional side affects the physical side, and the physical side affects the emotional and mental side of the fight. So let's go ahead and get after it. So eye contact was a really big deal in this fight. So if we look before the fight, the stare downs, obviously both guys made eye contact. It's kind of a forced thing to do in that scenario. You know, they're brought face to face. No one's going to look away then, although you could stare at someone's forehead and not actually make eye contact. But where it gets a little more interesting is during the fight. So you have getting into the cage, Usman is always making eye contact, and he has that mean mug on his face. I've got my notes here on my computer that just went dark. He's always, he's got that mean mug. He's staring someone down. If you notice, Edwards didn't make any eye contact before the fight, constantly looking away. Now, what could this possibly mean? The guy who's mean mugging is obviously trying to, he's engaged in mental warfare here. He wants to show you that he's the boss. I make eye contact. You're my prey. I'm the predator, blah, blah, blah. We've all seen that a million times. Now, Leon not making eye contact, a couple scenarios here on why he didn't make eye contact, possibly. I'm not in his head. One, he might have been getting psyched out by Usman, right? He didn't want the eye contact. He didn't want to even engage in anything outside of the actual fist fight with Usman, right? He wanted to keep everything within himself. Secondly, he might have just wanted to focus on himself, right? He doesn't worry about the man in front of him. He has a game plan set, and he is going to stick to that game plan, and it doesn't matter the person in front of him, right? He is going to only focus on what he can control. And I think that's really important for fighters to always keep in mind. Too many times I feel that fighters and coaches, camps, they think too much about their opponent, right? They give them way too much credit. Their whole game plan is based on what the other guy is going to do and how they can counter it and how they can control that guy, stop that guy from doing things. I think that's not the best approach to fighting. When you can only control the things that you do. I mean, to an extent physically you can control somebody and stop them from doing things, but they're going to do things to you during the fight, right? You can't base your entire game plan on countering a guy. You need to go in and get to positions physically and mentally that help you win the fight. So concentrating on you and not so much on your opponent, I think is a big deal. And that is potentially what Leon was doing. Staying within himself, not letting the moment get too big, so he wasn't even going to make eye contact. Keeping himself calm. He might have had a mantra going on in his head at the time to keep him focused. Now, more about eye contact. That mean mug that Usman always had, if you notice, it ended after the first round. After the first round, when Leon had his back, was going for the choke, he had taken him down. It was the first time he'd ever been taken down in the UFC. Mounted, back take, working out of the choke, lost the round. When he went to get up, you notice the frustration. He actually kind of tried to push Leon a little bit when he got up and would not make eye contact. Definitely made it clear he did not want anything to do with Leon at that point. Kind of had that smirk on his face. And what that smirk tells you is he was embarrassed. All right? It had never happened to him before, and he did not want to look at Leon and let him know the emotions that he had. He was embarrassed. He felt small. He wanted to keep everything to himself and go back to his corner. So that was very, very important. You could see the kind of the chink in his armor when he started getting the physical side taken to him, which he was not used to. Now, after that round, if you notice between round 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, he definitely made eye contact. Usman did. He tried to stare Leon down. Actually, between the second and the third round, when he stood up, he stood over him and looked down on him. This is a classic peacocking type gesture where you want to look bigger than your opponent, make them look up at you. You have the high ground. You're superior. Just more in that mental warfare aspect using eye contact. And he wanted to make it very clear that he had won that round. He had dominated him, and that's why he did that prolonged look down at Leon. So eye contact, very important in this fight, at least to them. I don't know how important eye contact is. It depends on your mindset going into the fight and what you want to accomplish with it. But it was very obvious both men at different times in the fight use eye contact differently. So another very important aspect in this fight was how the cornermen worked their corner. Between round 1 and 2, when Usman went back to the corner, he had just lost the round, like definitively. He had not lost a round that definitively in a long time. You can say that Colby Covington beat him in a round, but it wasn't like that. He didn't get taken down and manhandled. So it was very important that Trevor Whitman handled the corner in a very particular way. He approached Usman in a very relaxed manner, which I think is just kind of Whitman anyway. He seemed just kind of like a chill guy. He smiled, and he told Usman in a very calm, direct manner, he said, "Hey, you did great in that round. You made one mistake. You got taken down. Let's watch our hips when we get into the over-under or clinch type situation, and you can rectify it." He downplayed the fact that he had just lost the round because he knew that what his fighter's capable of, right? So there's no need to blow that out of proportion. I think he handled that exactly how he should. Now, we didn't see the corner between round 1 and round 2 of Leon, but throughout the fight, they did go to his corner some, and his body language was that of a defeated fighter, between round 3, 4, 4, 5. He wouldn't even face his cornerman because his cornerman was yelling and pointing, and he even smacked him, telling him, let your fucking hands go, cussing at him and yelling. And this, in my opinion, is the worst type of corner you can possibly have. Now, I know you're going to say, oh, everybody needs different things. And that's true. Everybody does need different things. But I don't think anybody works well off of being yelled at. I mean, just look at the body language of Leon in that corner. Like I said, he wouldn't even face his cornerman. He sat to the side and looked down. I don't know if he made eye contact with him one time. So he was completely shutting his cornerman out. He did not want to hear it. He was embarrassed. He felt small. Just think about any time you can have in your life where you're trying to do something, anything, like especially like kids athletics or running in the hallway in school when you're not supposed to, or home, and someone yells at you just out of the blue, boom, they yell at you, hey, stop, do this, do that. You feel small. Never have you been like, yeah, you're right, I shouldn't have ran in the house. Good point. Or you're right, I should have done better. That's not how it works. You feel small. You feel like you're under a microscope and everybody's looking at you, and you don't want that right then because you just screwed up, right? So that's the last thing you want. Terrible cornering by Leon's corner. And I know you can say, wow, he ended up winning the fight. I mean, he did, but it was not because of that cornering advice. Now, I do want to say, raising your voice is different than being yelled at, right? If we look at the corner advice from Teddy Atlas to Timothy Bradley in their fight, the fireman speech that he gave in the corner, he wasn't yelling at Timothy Bradley that he screwed up and he needed to do this and he needed to do that. He was his hype man at that point. He's like, we live in the fire, blah, blah. You can look that up yourself. That's not my job. But then that's completely different. There are other examples of horrific cornering in the UFC. One in particular, I'll leave the names out, but it was a pretty big deal at the time. This corner man was yelling at his fighter, to do better, and the other corner man said something. The chief second, pop, backhanded the other corner man. Well, what kind of professionalism in that? That is awful. What does the fighter think? He's getting yelled at, and now he sees you hit the other corner man for trying to talk. Totally is going to take his focus off the fight, if he was even focusing on the fight to begin with, because he was losing. It's madness to me how bad some of the corners are. And I'm not just talking about advice, X's and O's, do this, do that. It's how it is packaged and given to the fighter that really gets between his ears in a good way or a bad way, right? They tend to shut you out when you're yelling and being hypercritical of what they've done. They need direct, step-by-step advice on how to do things, right? You could hear Leon's corner yelling at times during the fight, get up. Well, how's he going to get up? What's he need to do? Help the guy out. He knows he needs to get up. You don't need to tell him that. Hey, Leon, knees in the middle, which his brother ended up, I believe that was his brother, yelling at him, get your knees in between you. Okay, good. His brother did a much better job than the chief second. But giving a guy step-by-step advice is way more practical than just yelling emotionally at your fighter. They're going to pick up on how upset you are, which again makes them feel small, makes them want to kind of retract into a shell, and that's never a good thing in a fight. Cornermen really need a lot of work in this aspect, and it's something that they should all be working on, like the fighter works in their own, working on their own technique, punches, kicks, takedowns, wrestling, all that good stuff. They work on that. The corner needs to be working on their cornering advice as well. Body language in the fight was also very important. You notice that Kamaru always has that kind of wrinkle in his brow. He's like that mean mugging coming at a guy like he's pissed off at it, which I always coach my fighters that we take all emotion out of the fight. This is business. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to try to implement my game plan, X's and O's, black and white. I don't need to get upset about anything. I'm not mad about anything. You go in there and you do your job, and that's it. But Kamaru always has that look on his face. But if you notice after the first round, when he lost, that look was gone. It was more like, okay, I really need to mind my P's and Q's here and figure out what he's going to do. A little bit of his confidence had broken. I think you could tell that in the way he looked. And that did come back later in the fight when he started really regaining confidence. Now, Leon, on the other hand, he kept backing up, which I don't really know if that's a lack of confidence. It's just, he was feeling pressured. He backed up a lot. Some guys fight like that. But where you do see a break in his posture, really, the way he stood and the way he carried himself, his shoulders, and his posture was when Kamaru would go to take him down, drive him against the fence. And in the first round, Leon did such an amazing job at defending the takedown. He had engaged hips, pushing them forward, big chest, big posture, head up, was very confident, and it worked. Now, later, as soon as Usman would shoot, Leon's posture would go from engaged hips, big chest, big shoulders, head up, to rounded, right? This is not good for takedown defense, and this is, you might say we're getting a little more into the physical aspect, but the reason that happened is because he was breaking mentally. He knew he was going to get taken down, so he kind of just gave into it, right? In his head, he was still fighting, but you can watch a substantial difference in the way his posture was in those situations. And you can say he's tired, but he did not get that much more tired from round 1 to round 2. I really don't think he was that tired. He was tired. Of course, you're fighting, 20 minutes, 15 minutes into the fight. Of course, you're going to be a little tired. But you can see he knew exactly how to defend the takedown. And he mentally kind of shut down a little bit because he was getting dominated, and he gave into it, which changed his posture, right? We talked about retracting into a shell when someone yells at you. That's kind of like Kamaru yelling at him when he shot. He's like, "Oh, you're right. You're probably going to take me down. You've done it before." And he kind of shelled up instead of that big, overt posture of confidence. So I think that was very telling in the fight as well. You can see the changes in body language, which correlates to confidence. As far as body language goes, round 5 was super telling. Usman pushing forward like he had done. He drives Leon against the cage, and he goes to take him down. He got like 90% of the takedown, but Leon's leg slips out. Boom, he pops back up. I think right there was a major decision in Kamaru's head to say, you know what? I'm going to hold him against his cage. I'm going to keep my forehead in his jaw, and I'm just going to ride out this victory here. Land little shots, do what I have to do to stay here. He did try another takedown. That was unsuccessful as well. But I think it might have been more just to keep him on the cage. Say, hey, if I get this takedown, I get it. If not, I'm still just going to hang out here on the cage. He had stopped thinking about finishing the fight and just thought about, I'm going to make it to the finish of the fight. He had it in the bag. It was very obvious that it was going to be 4 rounds to 1. Now, Herb Dean breaks them, though. Okay, so that kind of puts a little hitch in his plan. Okay, I got to get back out here and fight a little bit. And he did move forward. Right after that break, he moved forward again, doing exactly what he was doing the whole fight. Because when you've done that the entire fight, it's just kind of like muscle memory. I'm just stepping forward. And that's how Kamaru's always fought, moving forward. Then I think it kind of kicked in again. He's like, you know what? Let me just kind of hang out. I'm going to stand in front of him, block some stuff, throw some stuff back, but I'm just waiting for that bell so I can retain my title. So he stayed in front of Leon. And as we saw earlier in the fight, anytime he stood in front of Leon, which wasn't very much, there was just a very short period of time where he did that, he would eat kicks, which he did not like, those side kicks to the leg at all. And we know he's got bad knees. And the inside leg kicks, Kamaru did not handle those well either. So when he stopped pressing forward, it allowed Leon to stand and throw these kicks. He didn't have to worry about the shot anymore. He didn't have to worry about getting backed up against the cage. So his confidence started to grow. If you watch his output in that last little bit of the fight after they broke off the cage, it went way up because he was way more confident in what he could do because he didn't have to worry about the takedowns. This is where Kamaru made a huge mistake. If he had decided to stop, he's just trying to make it to the finish line, he needed to back up and move side to side, draw Leon in and fake those takedowns. Right? Now, would have been the best thing to do is do what he had done for the past 20 minutes and keep moving forward and keep trying to win the fight, right? You need to fight bell to bell for the best results, and I think he pulled back, and it was a huge error. He should have, like I said, gotten on his bike, moved side to side, threw some jabs and fakes to keep Leon back. Don't let him have that confidence in throwing those kicks, and keep threatening your takedowns, even if you're not going to do them, so that Leon didn't have that confidence. Leon started building the confidence coming forward, while Kamaru just stood in front of him. He stood right in the pocket, not inside pocket, but they stood right in front of each other. And he's like, hey, I'm just going to block some techniques here and coast to the end. And Leon's confidence shot up, gave him an opportunity to land what he wanted to land without having to worry about takedown. And it was a massive error on Usman's part. He threw in the towel too early on trying to finish the fight, trying to coast, and he didn't coast properly. He didn't make the correct adjustments moving backwards and fighting, which he's not used to doing. So overall, those are my thoughts on the fight and how confidence and emotions can really have a huge effect on what you do physically, and how the physical aspects can have a huge effect on what you and your opponent, on how you react emotionally, right? It all goes together, right? It's like a recipe. You can't just be a really good physical fighter or be like a mental rock but have complete shit technique, right? It all goes together like a recipe when you're cooking, right? If one little ingredient's off, the whole thing can be off. So, hope everybody gets out there, works the mental game, do the whole like, subscribe stuff on this video. I would appreciate that. And we'll see you next time on The Mental Breakdown.